Apparently my computer is not liking the things I'm clicking today. It's doing all kinds of weird stuff. All right. I made it. Okay. I'm good. Whew. We've got a couple minutes to spare, so I'm going to stick the phone on my lap in case it goes off so I can feel it. Oh boy, it's been a busy week. Hey, Ewu, happy Sunday. We made it. We were not entirely sure what was going to happen today. Mental health crises are always fun. Not at all, especially for the people that are going through them. Angela says, hello, Siofra, and chat hugs to all. Thank you, Angela. Ian says, hello to everyone, and welcome. Sana says, hey, Lady Siofra, any advices on herbs about abundance?
Abundance herbs.
Abundance herbs.
Stuff that's green. No, sorry.
Ian says stuff that's green. I would have to look it up like everybody else. I can't think of anything off the top of my head at the moment.
Yeah,
Brenda's...
we don't do like the root doctors and things to be the ones to ask more of the voodoo or hoodoo that work with that stuff. We do some, but yeah, I'd have to look it up. I don't know anything.
So Brenda says hello there. Hi, Brenda. And Erin says hello. Hi, Erin. And Angela says cinnamon would be the go-to herb, at least that's what she's heard. And Jacqueline says, oh, yay, you're on. Yes, Jacqueline, thank you for your support and good wishes and things. It's been a weird few days. I think we've made a breakthrough with my granddaughter. Apparently she told me I broke her because I cracked her open and she can't seal it back up and hide from everything. So we're in that phase where everything is like spewing out and raw and so forth. So I see it as progress, but it doesn't feel good. That's the way that works. So
Well, and yeah, in the middle of moving your office and everything else.
oh, I know, it's been a hectic time. Ewu says, I literally just tried tarragon for the first time upon your recommendation. Interesting flavor. Don't know what to add it to. I really like it with potatoes. That's one of the things I tend to use tarragon for, but I also like it with soups and stews and things. It does have an interesting flavor, though.
Yeah, I like it.
Yep.
Adds a nice sweetness.
It is. It's sweet, which is unusual because most kitchen herbs don't seem to be sweet. They seem to have different flavor palettes than that. So, yay for trying. And it's okay if you decide you don't like it. Moonfire Dawn says, hello, lovelies. I think sage, cinnamon, and oregano are good herbs for most positive mojo. Well, I know sage is definitely good for keeping negative stuff away.
Yeah, I guess I've always took the approach of using like talismans or prosperity candles or something like that instead of herbs myself. Not for any particular reason, just because that's what.
Oh, personality or, what we are used to. Jacqueline says, yes, progress can be painful. She won't know it's good until she gets on the other side of it. Yeah. I mean, she's been blocking with drugs and alcohol for so long, and she's now sober maybe for the first time in 15 years or so. So this is a huge shock to her system, and living in a household with people like us who are not normal and don't react the way other people react has been quite an interesting thing for her. But yes. Ewu says, okay, I definitely try it with sweet potatoes. Thanks for your advice. Angela says, I use parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, and rose and juniper for a booster. Yeah, I made a scrying candy out of parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme because I read a story where that actually was something they did, and I thought, well, how can I use that? Because I don't know if the tea would be all that tasty just on its own. So I made the tea using equal parts of each herb, and then I used that water, the tea water, to make the hard candy, and it actually worked quite well.
Actually turned out quite well, but I still wasn't all that fond of the taste.
Well,
But
yeah,
the result for the purpose worked.
yeah,
Yeah.
it did work for the purpose, and of course, it's not the kind of candy you're going to make for mass consumption because it's definitely not sweet in that sense. But hey, it was a good way of using it. That for that. Vanessa V says hello. Hi, Vanessa V. Lulu says hello. Hello, Lulu. Angela says there's a whole song with that herb blend. I added it to a candle spell for curiosity. The parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, and wow, that worked. Yeah, that's where I got the idea, the song, and then the story that went with the song that I read one day.
Well, do you realize that that was the harp music that I had on like a minute ago when you told me you're about to go live and I turned it off?
Nope, I
That's what
didn't
they were
realize
playing.
that was that song.
Yes.
Cool.
Garfunkel cover.
All right then. Synchronicities abound. I like it.
Yeah, Simon and Garfunkel came out with that as a song way back when.
It's actually a much older song. It's a really old English folk
But the
song.
name of their song, I think it was it Scarborough Fair? Or was
Yes.
it just, yeah, okay. I had that album when I was like small and it was on a piece of vinyl. Long time ago.
Angela said you should listen to the Hound plus the Fox cover of Scarborough Fair.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff in old English folk tunes and European folk music and stuff like that. And it is, I liked a lot of it because I like the way it sounds. Jacqueline, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support. You are one of our biggest supporters. Thank you.
Blessed be.
Yes. And Cameron says, please shout out. Okay, shout out to who? Cameron Brett. Lulu says, we saw a black swan yesterday in a local pond. Probably escaped from somewhere, but still amazing.
That'd be cool. I don't think I've ever seen a black one.
I've only seen them in pictures. I've not seen any in person. Moonfire Dawn says, Simon and Garfunkel are some of my first music memories. I still have my mom's vinyl. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I wish I had that one album. I guess I should go and get it again. I have some random stuff of theirs,
But hey, this is what life is about, right? Rolling with the punches and figuring out what to do and when magic can aid us. And when we just have to like power through and do whatever needs to be done. Yeah, I'm pretty persistent. She wouldn't come in and talk at all, so I went outside and sat down and started talking to her. And yeah, that was when I cracked her open, apparently. Poor girl. So, Google says I took a ton of videos. The black swan. Angela says I saw the craziest thing. I saw a red-tailed hawk land on a lamppost and a sparrow land on the lower lamp of the post. The hawk glanced at it, then both sat a moment and then flew off. Guess the hawk wasn't hungry. Yeah, I guess not. They were just hanging out. Joy says, hello all, who are you talking about? Talking about my granddaughter and her mental health crisis that is becoming actually more full-blown at this point now that she's sober for the first time. She's not on hard drugs or painkillers and she's now off of the alcohol. So yeah, her brain is having difficulty coping with the fact that there's nowhere to stuff or hide things, and that's kind of where she is making progress and realizing what's happening. Vanessa V says, what is the story of the song? I remembered you said that it was a formula for clairvoyance, but what's the story behind that? That's all I remember is that that's the story behind it and that they put it into music. It was so long that I read the story about it, I don't remember. That was so many years ago. We did that for Samhain candy, which is coming up. Violet says, hi. Hi, Violet. Angela says, Violet, yay, you're here. Joy says, how old is your granddaughter? 29. And she's never lived in a household that didn't have some kind of subtext or conflict or hiding
agendas,
of
yeah.
whatever it is that's going on. To be in a completely honest and upfront household is very new to her, and it makes her brain hurt. She's trying to adapt, like talking, telling people where she's at, how she's feeling, what's happening to her. She's like, why do you keep telling me what you're doing? I'm like, because that's how you develop a relationship. Trust and communication
Yeah.
is very important. So Angela says the story of the song is that a peasant was courting a noble, and the noble placed impossible tasks because they truly weren't allowed to be together, like finding an acre of land where the ocean water touches the land, as in an acre between the water and the sand. Yeah, that's right. There's all that stuff in there, not just the parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme section. There's a lot of those kinds of old myths that have the impossible love task to prove yourself worthy. In fact, the Irish version of that, there's well, I'm trying to think if I can remember which one I'm thinking of now. But I guess Cupid and my brain's not working today. And his love interest, she had to prove herself worthy to Aphrodite. My brain. You guys remember what it is? You'll tell me in a minute. Anyway, and then they in the end reaped them parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme in a sickle of leather and a bunch of heather and presented it to them to show they tried. Lulu says Saturn return. Yep, that's it, exactly. It can be difficult but necessary to bring up and heal things to move on to something better. Absolutely. And Angela said, walk my love. Dual la ruin. And Lulu says 29, age of Saturn return. Yeah, when I turned 28 was when things started to really shake loose for me. And that was the year I started channeling and moved from one situation to a completely different one, went from being in the city with my second husband to being in the middle of the bush with my then partner, the psychologist guy. Yeah, and so I'm not surprised that, and I'm glad that she came here to do it. I think we might be the reason why she survives through this. Vanessa V says, a friend told me that Scarborough Fair was when the witches got together, but I haven't found that version. Yeah, there's all sorts of things lost in history. Cupid and Psyche. It finally came to me. Psyche was the female part of that. She fell in love with Cupid and wasn't supposed to ever look on his face and stuff like that, and then she violated that, and then she had to go through all the trials. Like, yeah. Anyway, they like that kind of stuff. Angela says, though that's about military spouse giving up everything to get her love prepared for battle, she hopes they'll just desert the place together. Sulala ruin. Yeah. But it's kind of interesting, the different mythologies that come up. Luo says, my Saturn return was insane. I lost everything. House, country of living, faced issues from father's side of the family, and then my father died when I was 30. Insane. Intense. And I think, we all have like the automatic Saturn return, but then there's other types of Saturn returns that can happen in your chart that I'm not as familiar with. And of course, right now, Saturn is retrograde still. It's going to be coming out, I think, the end of October. But it's been retrograde for a while. So if you're in your Saturn return and in a Saturn retrograde and you have a lot of blockages, I imagine that puts a lot more pressure on your psyche. For sure.
I have to go get some painkiller.
Okay. Ian's going to go get some painkiller. Still no word from the granddaughter, so we don't know if we're picking her up or when. Yeah, it's trying to figure out how to arrange everything today. She hasn't been sleeping for like 4 days or so. So I didn't feel comfortable with her driving herself to this job she was supposed to do that she didn't make it to the last time she left. So I took her to make sure she got there. Now we're waiting for her to get done so we can get her back. And it's just up in the air. And I like consistency, and, it's like, Lula says, my husband and son are 30 years apart and are in Saturn opposition. Fun for me. Oh my. Both of them going through their Saturn return at the same time. Yeah, that just sounds peachy. 45 and 15. So you've got 14 years before all hell breaks loose. Yep, that'll be fun. Somewhere around there. He'll be 58 and, I guess 58 and 28. Or 59 and 29. Get ready now. Start planning. Make sure you're prepared. Suppose it could be simple if everybody is, I don't think I had too much trouble with my second Saturn return because I was in a healthy relationship with Ian already, and so yeah, things went pretty well that time. Ruth says, hi all. Hi Ruth. Angela says, everything else is up in the air always. This is true. Frankie says, I turned 27 in January, getting close to mine. Got a few years or so to get prepared. Lula says, I'm trying. I'm very philosophical now. Well, I think that getting some distance from things like that helps a lot. I mean, I've been through a similar thing that my granddaughter's going through, and she knows that I've been through it, and Ian's been through a similar thing as well, going through our shadow work and clearing out our inner thought processes and things, and making more conscious choices and decisions, learning better self-talk, not like, yelling at ourselves for not being perfect and so forth all the time, that kind of thing. So I think we're better equipped to help her learn those skills because, yeah, there's a lot of secrets in the other parts of our family. There's a lot of like keeping things at bay and holding things at arm's length and not dealing with whatever it is that's actually happening that makes it difficult. Audrey says the original Scarborough Fair song is from the Middle Ages, definitely a favorite, and I love Simon and Garfunkel's version. Yes, they have wonderful voices. They were so well matched together.
Yeah, it's like
too bad they fell
too
apart.
bad they didn't do about 10 more albums before that happened,
Yep. Maybe they went through their own little Saturn return, and that's what happened. I haven't looked into that either. But, relationships are like that. They're very dynamic, and if people aren't paying attention to the pressures that a relationship might be under, and aren't dealing with them before they become like pressure cooker explosion kind of moments, they can seem like they're coming out of the blue when in fact they've been building in there for a long time, which is why good communication is so vitally important. Heck, I'm having a heck of a time trying to get my granddaughter to understand when she says she's coming home soon. I think that means 15 to 20 minutes. In her head, it could mean an hour and a half to 4 hours. And I hate that uncertainty. It drives me nuts. Lewis says, in my Saturn return, there were days when I literally had to tell myself to function. Will never forget how I walked down the street and was actually telling myself, left, right, because I had no energy to actually walk. Yeah, and that's the challenge, to take control of your life instead of having your life taking control of you. And that's where she's at. She's at that cusp right now. And boy, life is a lot better when you take control of it.
Yeah, I hope she comes down on the right side.
Me too. We can only do as much as we can and hope for the best. But yeah, definitely. Life is interesting. So now that you all know our stuff, we're knowing some of your stuff. What else do we want to talk about today? We have some other subjects we'd like to cover, and or whatnot, or keep on talking about Saturn. We can do that too. Angela says positive well wishes and hugs for you and your family, Siofra and Ian. Thank you. Vanessa V says never heard of the Saturn return. Okay then, more Saturn return stuff. The idea is Saturn is the planet of karma and limitations and constriction, um, boundaries, law, that kind of thing. And so it has a 28 to 29 year cycle going around the solar system. So when you're born, Saturn is in a specific place in your chart, and 28 to 29 years later, it's in the same place in your chart, so it completes a cycle. And when it comes around again, it's like breaking through to a new level and trying to open things up, bring things to the foreground.
Wasn't it about how old I was when we got together?
Yes, actually, you were 27 when we met, about to turn 28 and 29 when we got married. So I am your Saturn return.
All right then.
And we've been together for more than 30 years. So we've gone through an entire cycle together and nothing has fallen apart. So we're
Awesome.
good. So we should be good for another 30 years or so. Yeah. And Angela says, me either, actually. Lula says, oddly, my father and I are 30 years apart. He died during his second Saturn return. Violet says, I love that you share stuff. I'm having a real hard time with my neighbor. We are very close, and no matter what I do, she's angry with me. She thinks I am fake. There is more one moment. Yeah, I was reading a little bit about it on your page, and it sounds like it's a very uncomfortable situation and very annoying. Lulu says he chose not to face his Saturn. Canary says, hello everyone. Hi Canary, welcome. Julia says, I did an oil painting of Saturn's rings disappearing a few years ago, and I was not consciously aware that was really happening. Yeah, I heard about that just recently. Saturn's rings are slowly vanishing. I guess they're falling to the surface of Saturn and disappearing.
I
into
suppose that
the
sounds reasonable.
gravity
now that you
is
mention
catching a hold of them. And Angela says Saturn's rings are disappearing. I don't know how long it's going to
They
take.
just need to go give it a big spin.
No, that's right. Spin it up a little bit more.
That's right.
Moonfire Dawn says, I have a lot of damage from our family, repression and stuff. I'm learning a lot just from your situation. I'm somewhere in between you and your granddaughter, growing, but I'm still struggling. Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what age we are or what's happening. We're always having some amount of growth, because change is the only thing you can count on. And life is constantly moving itself into a new state. So yeah, it never stops. Learning is always a process. Violet says she had a crap upbringing, and I am in a space of where she would not even like to say hi if we are in the same driveway. My best effort is to leave her alone and get out of my head. And
yeah, that can be tough.
it can be difficult to do that, but it's like, it's probably nothing to do with you personally. It's a projection on her part. And you can't fight someone else's projection unless they're willing to actually look at what they're doing. And it doesn't sound like she is. So yeah, your best is to realize that, okay, that's where she's at, that's what she thinks, and there's nothing I can do about what she thinks, because that's who she is. And I've certainly had my fair share of meeting people like that. I just found out recently that from my granddaughter, apparently she believed for a while that I didn't care about anybody, and that I was a horrible person, and Ian didn't care about anybody. We just cared about ourselves, and this was force fed from her father, who we do not care for because he's not a nice person. But she was young enough that she absorbed all that, and that was sort of the beginning of this week that it started coming out, and she started recognizing that she had all these notions about who we were, and I praised her for staying open-minded enough to, actually I gotta go
Yeah,
up
start
here a little bit.
recognizing that that's.
Whoops. I'm doing something wrong. I'm trying to go back up, and I've lost my little thingy here. Here we are. There it is. It was out in the corner. Okay. So, Canary says, any advice on how to break through an astral memory block or just how to remember an astral experience that you've forgotten a lot of?
Probably start by writing down what you remember in full detail. I don't have much more of a suggestion. I know that practice and stuff can help, or
Getting in the right frame of
Yeah.
mind for the memories to return, because it's an altered state.
that's true. Yeah, if you could try and get yourself in the same state. Now, I have noticed years back that I used to spontaneously astral travel a lot more than I thought that I was, because I used to forget most of it when I came back, but then I'd remember when I got in that kind of mental state again, it would come back to me and I'd remember these previous things that happened. But it seems like I would only remember them when I was in that state. So when I come back, I remember that I forgot something. But yes, it can be hard to bring through sometimes.
It can be very difficult.
Yep.
Ruth says, I can't do shadow work. I do like myself anyway. Well, good. I'm glad you like yourself. Angela says, just reflect it back. Maybe bury a mirror in the garden facing your house. That would be about Violet's neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you can put mirrors facing outward inside your house, reflecting things away from you as well. She doesn't have to know. Lula says, tell us stories of Uranus opposition. That's me right now. They haven't bought a red sports car, but discovered magic instead.
Probably serve you better than a red sports car, all in all.
I think so. More long lasting. It doesn't cost as much for
Yeah.
gas, especially.
I admit, it'd be fun to have a sports car, but I'd rather have a good solid mid-sized sedan first, and then go sports car if you don't have to have it, especially over here on the coast where it rains.
So Angela says, or get an outside mirror mosaic ball. That'd be very decorative. Violet says, big love. Angela says, reflects it all back. Canary says, I used to be like that. If you said hello, I'd just ignore people. I wasn't trying to hurt people's feelings. I just really didn't want to interact with people at that point. Well, actually, yeah, that was one of the things that came up in our discussion. I realized suddenly that she was at that stage when I first started therapy in the 80s, when it was like if someone wasn't threatening my very existence in my life, I didn't respond to them. I could hear what they were saying. But if there wasn't a direct question that needed to be answered, there was no reason for me to respond. And so I suddenly became aware of the fact that I did that during that time. So it was sort of interesting. And she's doing that now, so that's coming out. Angela says her father sounds like he's the north end of a south walking donkey. Mm-hmm. Yep. And unfortunately, he's still here. And he still sends her horrific text messages and calls her names and her mother names and us names, and and she tries to engage to try and change his mind or make him see, what's really going on. And of course, he isn't capable of that because he's got all of his own damage and he's not willing to work through it, or capable. I don't know. There's a lot of drug damage to his brain because meth has been a huge part of his life for a while. So I don't know if it's like beyond the point where normal things would work and he could be healed, But in any event, that doesn't help. And then her other grandparents are here as well, and there's this whole dynamic going on there that keeps reactivating all these old patterns. So she has a lot of challenges. Being with us, though, definitely different.
Different kind of challenge.
Different kind of challenge, yes. It's like, oh my God, I'm not used to being around people like you. Canary says, thanks for the advice. You're welcome. Angela says, magic saved my life. Mine as well. Violet says, I'm over her laughing. I needed that. Laughter is the best medicine. The red Corvette stream. I'm cooking up a kitchen storm today, a week's worth of food I freeze. Boring, I know. Well, it's sensible.
Yep.
And
Practical.
Angela
for sure.
says, not boring, it's a consistent routine. Violet says, I love that, Angela. Saved your life. Yeah, well, magic saved a lot of us, I think.
Yeah.
It gave us a method, tools.
To deal with some of the stuff.
Yeah, to rearrange the inside of our brains so that it worked the way the way we wanted it to, instead of just being stuck. I mean, there's all this.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, there's all this psychology. At least it was at the time that you're sort of set by the age of like 4 or 5 years old, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, that's kind of it. This for the rest of your life. And I disagree. I think I'm evidence that that's not true, and that you can actually transform your own subconscious and unconscious landscape to be better serving for your purposes of what you want to do, and take charge of your existence.
They've been doing it in India for thousands of years if you get a hold of the right texts.
Yep. Violet says, you two are some of the most healthy people I know, and my loved ones are like you two are. Well, good.
Well, that's nice.
I guess. That should be good, right? I didn't read that wrong. It's hard to find healthy people.
Well,
Emotionally.
Wow.
Violet, thank you, Violet. Apparently this is a day. My.
Well, I like the little thing riding on the rocket there. That's pretty cute.
It's like a genie?
I'm not sure.
No, snowman? Rocket? He's on a rocket.
He's a green blob with a
He's
headband.
pretty spectacular, though.
Yep.
Thank you very much for that, too.
Like his headband with a little feather in it, I think. It's a feather, yeah.
Angela says, you two are amazing. Your lives make me smile.
Well, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And thank you so very much for the money donations. It'll help with all the stuff we have going on.
That's true. Moonfire says, magic saved me too. I struggle with addiction and would be way drunker if I hadn't learned to burn off the critters. I'd be stumbling around town without a center. Violet says, heart. Vanessa V says, and is your granddaughter into magic as well? Peripherally. She has gone to rituals over the years, the public ones that I've done and the family ones that we've done. She hasn't gotten into a serious practice at the moment, and I think she needs to wait till she clears a little bit more of this stuff up. But she was watching my videos when she lived up in Portland, and so was her housemate. And so I think that there is an option there for her, and she certainly listens to the things that I talk about. And, like in our family, I was telling her the other day that when she was little and my daughter would be terrified that somebody was going to come and kill them because the grandfather was like reneging on a meth deal or something like that, my daughter would call me up and ask me for things to do to protect the family, and I know that she did them. And I consider that she's a witch and my granddaughter is a witch. They just don't necessarily self-identify as witches at this point. So, I don't know. So Canary says, anyone know anything about ayahuasca? Might not be how it's spelled. I'm curious lately and considering doing a ritual with it. Thoughts? That would be something Ian knows something about.
Well, just a little bit. And I don't think I spelled it either, but I got a closer spelling. I know it's got that H-U-A in there for ayahuasca. I know only by reading about it, but I've read that it's very intense. You don't want to do it for fun or enjoyment. You do it to take a serious dive into yourself. You'll also end up barfing a whole bunch.
It's probably something best to do with a guide.
And it tastes awful. And I would recommend, it's a native thing originally, so I don't know what the criterion were and stuff, but all I know is if you go to do it, take it seriously, and I don't know much more about it than that. It sounds much more unpleasant than like mushrooms or something like that, as far as sheer unpleasantness goes and intensity of experience. But on the other hand, it probably transforms people more thoroughly usually than other things because it's so intense. But I have read that it's something no one would do for fun. Put it that way.
So we have no personal experience.
Yes.
So Violet says, how do you burn off the critters, Moonfire, rather to the teachers than Moonfire? Well, she's talking, I believe that Moonfire is talking about the larvae that come with addiction. And so if I'm wrong, we'll ignore everything I'm saying. If I'm right, this is the answer to the question. Cleansing and clearing your own aura and disconnecting from the substance and from the thoughts that are associated with the substance. This is the reason why, like, if you go into a drug treatment program, one of the things they usually tell you about right off the bat is if you succeed, you will lose all of your current friends, because most of the people you're hanging out with are there because of whatever it is that you're addicted to. They're either a source or company or validation or what have you. And if you really don't want to be involved in the substance, then you also are going to end up not wanting to be involved with the people who are still involved with the substance, because they have their larva and they're going to be trying to bring you straight back into it. So
Thank you, Ruth.
We got another one? Oh my God.
That's very sweet.
Wow. This is certainly a day.
Yeah, so they did. Ayahuasca generally is used like a cleansing, and part of that comes along with all the barfing and stuff, but it's also cleansing your internal self, your internal world out of you, from what I've read. And under the right circumstances, I would try it, but they'd have to be the right circumstances, and I'd have to be sure about it.
Canary says, magic saved my life. I'm just glad I found it instead of using something else to try and fill the gaps and voids, etc. in my life. Yeah, me too. Because at least it's something that's, I consider it quite positive. I'm up higher than you are, because I don't know about Ruth yet. Lulu says, Saturn rules my chart. He loves to see if I can overcome challenges. It's harder to deal with Saturn for those who aren't used to it. Does that mean that you're also a Capricorn like me? Because I find Saturn actually comforting, because I like things that have boundaries, and I'm, at least at this point in my life, it's like boundaries I consider good. It helps to like define the universe. And so Ian said the spelling. Canary says at Ian Ta.
Violet Stars and spelled it right.
Yes, Angela says it sounds like a cleansing I heard about once people used to travel to do. Yes.
And that's what they do. It gets supposedly it gets everything out. That's what I've heard from what I've read about people who've experienced it.
Joy says, my daughter is 30. She's a Capricorn, and I think she thinks I'm a fruitcake. But when she's sick, she always wants my herbs and oils. Isn't it funny how that works?
About right, yeah.
That sounds about right. I mean, I get that too. It's like, but when they're having a problem, they're like, what do you think I should do about that? Can you help me out? I'm like, okay. Angela says, they said you would feel better, but it might kill you because the stuff was toxic to a degree. People tripped and threw up and were laying flat out.
Yeah, it takes the dose needs to be just right. And yeah, it's definitely somewhat dangerous in general. So I'd look very carefully at the specifics and make sure it was safe.
Moonfire Dawn says, ayahuasca is something like DMT, I think. I would definitely prefer mushrooms. Mary says, nope, it's not for fun or enjoyment. It's a weekend retreat I'm looking at with a guide, so that's good. I've heard horror stories, but I really do want to ascend or be on a higher path. Thanks so much for the advice. Good. I'm glad you're doing this the right way, and making sure that you have the support that you might need in order to follow through with any of the results that you might get.
Yeah.
Sometimes people need, something to break through a block.
For sure.
Vanessa V says, well, the word witch has become a scary word with all the connotations in the media and history. My mother always freaks out when I mention witchcraft, even if she's technically a witch too.
Yeah.
All
Well, it
definitions.
is. They've certainly made it into something, you know.
Oh, hey,
That's really not.
apparently because the Hocus Pocus 2 has come out, which I never cared for the first one, so I'm not watching the second one. That's a personal choice. But there's a whole bunch of Christians that are warning people not to watch it because the movie is going to cast spells into their living room and whatnot.
Yeah.
And people are putting up, I've seen on my feeds, marked safe from from witchcraft and magic from Hocus Pocus 2. And I'm just like,
Jeez.
oh, you people, you are all worried about the wrong things. So now
Okay.
I've gotten to Ruth, and thank you very much, Ruth. I appreciate that. I like that color too. It's a nice little fox.
Yeah, it's pretty cute.
Lulu says you can also lose relatives, and that's scary. Well, yeah, that is very true. And I did. In fact, I was pointing that out to my granddaughter. I have a brother that disowned the entire family. I have a sister who has now pretty much done the same thing later down the road, but still the same consequence. Yeah. And I am not a person for anyone in the family to give a family secret to unless they are planning on having it known to everyone else. Because I see those secrets as toxic and bad. Moonfire Dawn says, yes, the larva. I had to drink a lot to get through my divorce and living with the ex, and if I hadn't had Dion Fortune's book, I would have been screwed. Yeah, the larvae are nasty little buggers. Violet says, full moon, woo woo. Yes, it's a full moon. And Ruth says, what? YW, whatever that means.
Yawa.
Yawa, okay. Opal says, my province, Alberta, has been going through processes to be able to treat depression and addiction using psychedelics. Actually, here in Oregon, we have something on the ballot to use psilocybin for treatment programs. We've actually already passed it as a state. They're going to try and put it back on the ballot and let different counties opt out of it if they feel uncomfortable for it. And I believe that since we are in a Republican-based kind of county in the state of Oregon, they're probably going to get rid of it for us, which is very annoying because it could be very helpful. So I suspect that when that goes through, the treatment centers and clinics that are supposed to open up in Oregon will only be in the bigger cities like Portland and maybe Eugene and, you know, larger metropolitan areas. And so people who live in the boonies are going to have to travel if they want to get that assistance for that. So I think that's got a lot of promising research and outcomes.
Me too.
Aaron Jones says, a few months ago I had a dream about weaving magic into fiber art. Does it seem like a real form of magic? Yes.
Of course it can be.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen my fiber art?
Well,
It's definitely. And dresses I've made, like when I made our wedding dress, my wedding dress for our wedding, I was putting magic into every stitch and every bead that I put on there, hopes for the future and dreams and everything else. So fiber is, I think, a standard kind of art form that magic uses.
yeah, if you were going to do that, I'd probably recommend, if you're using it specifically for that it might hold a charge better if you use a natural fiber. But other than that, you can imbue anything with it if you put enough into it.
Yeah, and I think that that's a sort of like a common folk art type of folk magic, where someone would, like when they make like the special clothes for an infant newborn, you know, kind of thing, or the blanket to wrap the newborn in. It's like there's all that love and hope and caring that goes into the creation of that special item that then sometimes follows that person for their entire life in some cases, and sometimes even gets passed down generationally. You know, christening dresses are something that are often passed down generationally. So I think that there is definite magic in that. Lewell says, I am a Capricorn rising but a Leo sun. Odd combination. Standing on your own is terrifying and many can't do it. Finding your own tribe is even scarier, so most stay where they are. Yes.
Yep, that's true.
Definitely. When I started on my when I decided to confront my past, and when I moved to Santa Cruz, it was easy for me to confront my father because he wasn't in my life anymore, and my relationship with him had ceased, externally at least, from the age of 17 or so. But when I did that, I also uncovered feelings I had about my mother and how she hadn't been there to protect me, and she was partially responsible for what I went through, and that was scary. The idea of potentially losing that bond with my parent, a primary parent, is like that relationship between a mother and a child is like on a whole different level, since they're like the vessel through which you come into this world.
Well, it was on a different level for me, that's for sure.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
and so I found the goddess and magic before I got to that point, and replaced that internal mother figure with the goddess energy, and the thing that will never leave, that's always going to be there no matter what is happening in my life, or what might happen to my mother, or whether she rejected me for confronting her or not. And that gave me the strength to like go through the process. And in the end, we came back together. Different kind of relationship. Her definition of love and mine are not the same. And I just got to the point where I could accept that that's where she was at, and that she feels that she loved me, even if I don't think that is what I would think of. But and so we have a relationship, albeit different. And yeah, it is a scary thing going through all that stuff. And we're coming into those months where, at least for us in the Northern Hemisphere, that kind of stuff is more out there in our faces. And Lul says, yes, full moon today. Yes. Moonfire Dawn says, Christians are so scared of the word witch. I tried to use other words with my mom, but she still doesn't seem to like visiting. Yeah. Captain Mo says, I grew up as a Catholic and am now studying green witchcraft. Cool. Lul says, I crochet with intention. Good. It's a good thing. Canary says, I know people who say they feel energy and magic even off some of my drawings.
And I would like to take a pause there briefly to
Okay.
to say something. That there is a big connection between art and magic, and if you treat your art like a form of magic, it can be quite amazing. But then there's the opposite. If you can find pictures that were painted or created or something like that by somebody who was a real artist and had some bit of enlightenment or insight, you can get those from the art also. You can kind of absorb them. You can kind of get, if you get into the mood and kind of get into the feel of the artist, there's a thing called Shaktipat, which is called so from India, but that happens, the gurus can give their disciples to awaken them. But it turns out you can get Shaktipat from almost anything if they have a good energy. I have gotten some from watching Eckhart Tolle on his videos on YouTube. I've got some from some books I owned, one by Swami Muktananda, and it comes through as an energy like that. And so knowing that those things are out there and are potential focuses, especially if, if the thing is hundreds or thousands of years old, hard to say how much of the original intent is there, but the paint will still have it to a certain extent. But the newer stuff probably is stronger for having been painted recently. But so yes, absolutely, use all kinds of art and magic together.
Well, in jewelry, it's like putting something together with intention.
Yeah.
What you want to have the stones to represent, what they're supposed to do when you put them on you, and that kind of thing.
But most people don't realize if you look at the right kind of painting, that you can get something out of it. You get it in a way that you hadn't before, because you can perceive something of the artist's perspective just from the way they painted it and such, assuming you're looking at a painting from a serious artist and not a bunch of soup cans from, what's his name though? I'm not, Andy Warhol was nice and famous, okay, can't argue with that, but I don't want his art hanging on my living room wall, frankly. Nothing, Neither here nor there. Sorry. Didn't mean to bring that up or heap anything on him. You know, people like Andy Warhol stuff, that's just fine, but not to my taste.
Yeah, that's what art is,
Sorry.
though.
Yeah.
It's individual. And it has
True.
to touch something in you in order for you to consider it art.
Yeah.
In my opinion, anyway. So, Lulu says, right now I'm crocheting a curtain with intent for my family. Good. Aaron Jones says, thank you. I was thinking that too. Yoshi says, hello. I'm always hearing about times of the year or day when the veil is at its thinnest, with Samhain coming up. My question is, when is the veil at its thickest? So if the veil is thinnest at dawn and dusk during the day, it's thickest at noon. Midnight, however, is not thickest. It's like night has its own kind of thing. So during the year, the two times that the veil is the thinnest are at Samhain and Beltane. And so both of them are the same as far as the connection, closer connection with the other worlds and spirits that inhabit them. So whether you're in north or south southern hemisphere, the Samhain is going to be their Beltane, and our Beltane will be their Samhain, kind of thing, energetically speaking, the seasons in between. So if that's the case, then that would mean that the opposites, so that would be Lunasa, or Lunasa, or however they say it, and what would be the other one? Not the equinoxes. Bridget's Day? In bulk in the middle of the winter. It's probably the other cross quarters. So you have the quarters and the cross quarters. The quarters are the equinoxes and the solstices, and the cross quarters are the things that are in between. And magically, they consider the cross quarters more important for magical workings in general than the quarters. So you've got winter solstice, then you've got Imbolc, which is Bridget's Day, then you've got spring equinox, and then you've got May Day, then you've got summer solstice, then you've got Lunasa, then you've got fall equinox, and then you've got Samhain. So that would probably be what it is. It'd be the other two cross quarters, which would be where it was at the thickest. But if your abilities are open, there's no time of day or night that is a bad time of day or night in order to commune with the other side or to have a connection with them. If your abilities are highly developed, you might notice a little extra boost, like every time the sun starts to go down, my eyesight starts to change, and I notice it immediately. But that doesn't mean in the middle of the day at noon that I won't be able to see things, because I can. I have to change my internal environment to that feeling that I'm now adapted to, what it feels like when it's like that, and then I can recreate that in myself at any time of the year or any time of the day. So it's just sort of like a guideline, I guess. And it's more likely that people who aren't so much into it are going to notice it at those times, as opposed to other people that are into it all the time. Make sense? All right, so Moonfire Dawn says, I love stitch witchery. I sewed a patch on my vest and it feels like war armor, and it's not even finished. Already my strongest protection. I took a week though, counted stitches and certain colors. It's always good to have it planned.
Oh yeah, you take that much time doing it and setting it up, you really get some energy into it. It can be really effective.
Yeah. And the more associations that you have with something, and the stronger those associations are, the more oomph the thing's going to have on the other planes, because it'll all sort of go through the fabric of reality there. Lulu says, well, of course we need to know that we have at least one normal parent. It makes us normal until we realize that our value doesn't necessarily come from belonging to a family or group. Yes. Opal says, nice. I sew patches on my vest as well. And I didn't even think of that. And Jolly says, "Hi there, hope you are well. Around 10 p.m. here, so the full moon is stunning today. Awesome.
Cool.
I'm so glad that someone is there to see it." Moonfire Dawn says Warhol's death was who he hung out with.
True. Yep. Yep.
Canary says, "Really interesting about the art and the energy you can get off of it. Future video idea, maybe? Maybe so."
Definitely. Yeah.
And
I was thinking about that idea anyway, so yeah.
Thank you very much, Captain Mo. We appreciate the support. It's always welcome.
Yes, it is.
Violet says, "Andy Warhol, laugh out loud. Do you have or know much about different tree magic? Like birch. I will Google each tree and start to learn too. I just bought a book on it too." Good.
Yeah,
Vanessa,
no, nothing specific for me, just generalizations like laurel for the sun type of thing. So I haven't specialized in that at all myself.
well, each time it comes up, I do more research.
Yeah, laurel is for the sun, willow is watery and
In
lunar,
basics.
and yeah.
Yep. And then each area has got its own associations with the trees too,
Right.
in stories
Well,
that you find out about.
I haven't seen anything, but I should research and find out what the Native Americans did in this area for herbs and things. If I can find anything specific about this area.
I think actually they're working on that kind of stuff in Coquille and the Coquille tribe and stuff like that, and trying to get a museum or something together. So we might actually have some possibilities there, and at the casino, they might have some resources at this point, because yeah, they have been doing some research. Vanessa V says Imbolc and Lunasaw. Yep, February 2nd, Joy says. Yes, thank you all. And Ian says, "Cap Mo, thanks so much for your donation. We appreciate it." And Joy says, "Is it easier to connect to your higher self or your spirit guides?" Ooh.
I would think generally to your spirit guides, because only in the sense that connecting to your spirit guides can require less opening to your higher self is usually requires a lot more development and stuff.
Internal work.
Whereas your spirit guides are usually, or at least a lot of times, willing to come down to your level to work with you. And your higher self, you kind of have to go up there to reach your higher self. So if that makes any sense. So it's usually, I would think, easier to work with your spirit guides. Yeah, that would be my thinking on the matter. Because you really have to get there to your higher self. You have to lift yourself up by your bootstraps to get to that point, so to speak.
Well, getting to your higher self is all about internal development.
Well, yes.
And your own evolution
Yep.
and so forth. So I would think that's the case. Yep. It would be easier because at least a spirit guide would have like an external source of oomph that doesn't have to come just from you and your ability to
right, and
close
usually
off
they
or
can
shut down your inner voices.
Yeah, and usually a spirit guide can come down to your level or to the earth level to, give you helpful stuff that's practical, whereas your higher self is all about, well, the higher self stuff, rather than practicality so much. But
So Kenna Yoshi says, "Makes sense. Thank you. You're welcome." Vanessa V says, "I would love to learn to weave and embroider. I want to learn so many things. I don't know where to start or how." I know. That's why we need more than one lifetime. There's a lot of stuff to learn.
yeah, me too, as far as that goes. But the important thing to remember if you really want to do something is to start. I mean, no matter how small that start is, just make sure you start. Actually start doing it, even if you don't know how you're going to get there in the end. Start by doing something towards that direction, and if you keep on it, you'll end up finishing it, even if you don't know where you're going to start with.
Yep. And it can be an interesting evolution.
Oh, it could be much more fascinating that way than having a plan in advance and then trying to do it, which is great, but then you're only likely to get the result you're aiming at, and you miss some of the very interesting things you can learn along the way too. So anyway, sorry.
That's okay. Opal says YouTube has many tutorials to help out with the how part. Captain Mo says, what's your all's opinion on mercury mirrors? Mirrors made from mercury? Like liquid mercury? Aaron, thank you. This is a day. I can hardly believe this. Thank you very much, Aaron. So mercury as a scrying mirror, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, how are you talking about scrying Mercury, the sphere, or a mirror made with Mercury, or yeah? I think that a
I mean, a
Mercury,
magic mirror to scry mercury is something that you can make without using the element of mercury.
right? But I think it's probably talking about Mercury in the mixture, like the old Electrum Magicum, which used Mercury as a. Electrum Magicum is an old combination of 7 metals to represent the planets, and it uses Mercury in it for that.
Yeah.
And I know of somebody who years ago made a sword of it, and the thing rang like a bell whenever he tried to use it.
Oh, right. I remember that story.
Yep. So apparently it was very difficult to use because it was always ringing. It was like the singing sword.
Oh my, we could have all kinds of things about that. Give the sword a voice like some of those crazy TV shows we watch sometimes. They could be out there singing and yelling at people and whatnot. Yeah. Anyway, yes. But so be a little bit more specific what you mean about mercury mirrors so we know what we're answering.
Yeah.
Because we're certainly willing to see what we can answer. So Moonfire Dawn says start, add, build. Thanks, Ian. Yes.
Yeah, I know that sounds basic, but the main thing is I've seen is most people don't start. They're like, no, but what if I, and they're
yeah, they what if
afraid
themselves
to
out
start.
of doing it because something bad might happen. What if I run out of money? What if nobody likes it?
Yes, well, we had a business and I was rebuilding one of our vehicles, and I had to kick one of our technicians out and tell him to go away and leave me alone while I was rebuilding the engine. Because he was like that. He just kept slowing everything. And, what about this? What about that? Like,
and he also was, you can't do this.
Yeah.
You've never done this before. You can't do this if you've never done this before. And Ian goes like, yes, I can. If you will go away and leave me alone.
It was interesting, but that was it. That was another example of somebody who's afraid to start on things.
Michael says, thank you both for your time and wisdom. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
And so I decided at one point when we started doing this that being open about what we were going through and so forth was a good idea because there's a lot of pretense out there where it's like you only highlight the things that are working the best and you never have any problems, and it's like a greater than life kind of persona. And I don't find that kind of stuff helpful. I like reality. And like Ian keeps saying, you can't make good decisions based on bad information. So we like information and being real and genuine, because what's the point of doing this otherwise? It's a waste of our time. But yeah, so we're foibled.
Foibled?
Yes. We have foibles. We're not perfect.
I was wondering what a foible would look like if you made it into a creature.
Sort of like a doily with eyes and maybe extra arms. I don't know. So Ian says, thank you, Aaron. You're all being amazing today. Thank you all again. Violet says, I looked up Mercury Mirror on YouTube. Curiosity. One had a spray paint called Mirror Effect. It reminded me that I mirrored my windows when I moved in, which helps with my neighbor too. Okay. Luo says, question, why are people marking themselves safe from a witchy movie if their religion is only correct one and their deity is all powerful? It does not make sense.
That's a good
Actually,
point.
it's witches that are doing it, and they're doing it as a joke to make fun of the whole process. At least the ones that I've seen. I don't know if any of the Christians are marking themselves safe from the movie. But yes.
Well,
It could have been that they started it and then the witches got on board and said, hey, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, but back to the Mercury thing, I think a person could make a mirror out of Electrum Magicum and that kind of thing and use Mercury in it, and it would be effective if they were able to work you know, with mercury and stuff safely. I always wondered about. I've worked with mercury a little bit, but I was always wondered about putting it in a hot mixture like that of hot metals.
Oh, then
And
the
if you have to worry
vapor
about
could be,
vapors,
yeah,
yeah,
vapor could be dangerous.
yeah. But then you can, well, yeah.
We know that mercury is toxic if you get it in your on your fingers. Not as toxic as like people
Yes,
make it
well,
out to be, like a thermometer
no,
broke in a
because I
school
mean,
and they evacuated the entire school, which is just sort of overkill.
yeah.
But because it kind of binds
Yeah,
together.
I've used mercury for panning and stuff, and I
Yeah,
mean, you know, it never bothered me, but then I wasn't exposing myself to huge amounts of it either, and I wasn't, you know, doing
yeah.
it on purpose or just holding it in my hand and playing with it or anything.
And I think that you could actually, you'd have, I don't know where you order elemental mercury, except maybe for gold panning purposes or something like that. But you could theoretically pour mercury onto a surface and look into it because it is
Well,
reflective
yes, you could use
and
it
a metal.
directly for scrying if you had enough of it. I think that would
Right,
probably be a little expensive,
probably. But
and I would think it would work pretty well, but never having tried it, I couldn't say for sure. I think it'd be great for scrying the Mercury sphere anyway.
so Michael says, oh, wait, yeah, didn't understand. Lou says, thumbs up. Michael says, as far as the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, if I continue to do this without invoking, will I leave an empty space for any type of energy to enter, or am I overthinking a basic ritual?
Um, Let me start with the last first. You are not overthinking a basic ritual because uh, its potential is much greater than being a basic ritual. Potentially, it's basically a complete self-development ritual in which you balance the four elements within yourself and with the spirit being the akaja part, and you end up being you can make yourself the equivalent of what if you were initiated into the golden dawn would have been like a fifth degree. So you can get at least what would be up to like the fifth degree in one of these magical fraternities, and the golden dawn only had 10 degrees, but fifth degree. So um and that just by balancing the elements with yourself and bringing the spirit in. So if you're doing that correctly, you can develop yourself. And it's not just, I always thought the banishing term was a misnomer because it can be so much more. It can be a real complete self development ritual. You bring in the elements, you run them through you, you cleanse yourself out, and you purify all this stuff from yourself. And you can purify stuff from your past, stuff that's bothering you. Use the elements to get that out. And working with the elements gives you the ability gradually to control them. And if you work with them on a regular basis, you'll become balanced. And if you do that using the lesser banishing, the lesser LBRP, lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, and you do it daily like I did it for twice a day for a couple of years. Pretty soon, because of keeping your elements in harmony on that level, everything will seem to take on a golden glow as if from outside because of the balance. It just everything looks different even though it's not different. I don't know how else to describe it, but it took me a whole lot of pentagram ritual to get that far. But so it's to get back to your actual question now. No, you're not overthinking a basic ritual, and um, usually if you're trying to get rid of all of the elements completely, which is pretty hard to do, but that's one thing. And yeah, you could be leaving an empty space for any type of energy to enter, but only kind of if you intend to do it and if you feel like you're putting yourself in a, a zone. It's not the word I'm looking for, but if that's not your focus when you're doing it, you won't have to worry about it. Now, a lot of times when I did it, rather than I preferred to rather than use the banishing rituals and try and banish all the elements from the area. I was using it more for cleansing, so I'd use the invoking rituals and I'd pull the element in and through me and have them cleanse everything out of the temple and out of me as it goes through me and out. And that's more consonant with Barden's way, so that's how I felt more like doing it. But it is not just a minor ritual, but for most people it is, because they don't realize the potential, and so that's all the focus they put in it. So again, it's always depending on your focus. If you're careful about it, or if you just feel uncomfortable with leaving an empty space for energy to enter, I'd recommend invoking, and I'd recommend that anyway. But if you're doing the Kabbalistic cross part right, you are invoking that energy down and through you and down to the earth, down from Kether, and bring that right on down. So you are doing an invoking at that point. The Kether is supposed to be the holiest possible light, the very source of light of God, so to speak, according to the Kabbalists. So the highest light you can get. So basically that invocation, if you do it properly, will certainly fill you and possibly the place with light. But if you do it right, you won't really end up with a vacuum. But if you, like I say, if you have any doubt, invoke something in there. Invoke a deity of some sort in addition.
Good answer.
Thank you. Long answer. Sorry to take so much time.
No, it's good. Violet says, great question, Michael. I'm waiting for the response too. Shay says, hello and happy October all. Hi, Shay.
Hi, Shay.
Lulu says, played with mercury from a thermometer as a child and see how I turned out. Apparently you're crazy, right? Like the rest of us. Marisol says, hello. Hi, Marisol. Violet says, yes. On the LBRP. I've been doing it every day for years in the morning. That was so awesome. Michael says, gotcha. Thank you both so much. You're truly priceless. Thank you for explaining. I truly appreciate it. I learned so much from both of you. Damn, you guys are awesome. No, that was a great answer.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Violet. So, yes, you're welcome. Jacqueline says, what is a good ritual when you don't want to banish anything? Well, I mean, for whatever you need. There's like rituals for connecting you to your whatever god or goddess or spirit being you're working with, or for the time of day or the time of the month, or there's so many different kinds of rituals out there. Jason says, I thought about Barden when you mentioned the element. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. There's a lot of invoking things. Banishing is there to just sort of get rid of negative energy or energy you don't want to have in a thing. And when you're creating a ritual, you're usually already banished the space that you're in, getting rid of negative stuff, banished yourself so that you're open and free to bring in whatever you're looking to do and focus on, and then building your circle and your space and so forth in order to make that container to fill it up with whatever it is you're working with. So I don't know how to answer that question except every other ritual in the universe. Yeah, I guess. Be more specific, Jacqueline. Ian says, thank you, Jason. It's much appreciated. We're just having a day of appreciation. It's awesome.
Yeah, this is very nice.
Yeah. So, Jacqueline says, I worry about banish the entities that are here. Ah, okay, gotcha. I don't think that's what we're talking about. When we're doing banishing, it's banishing like negative influences of an element, or
usually
making a space
way,
clear for whatever it is that you're inviting to come in so that it's comfortable.
You have to watch out about banishing beings, by the way. Back when I first got started, I once made a talisman that was to keep all beings away from me because I was so young and new at this. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, I don't know if I want anybody hanging around, so I'll make a talisman to banish them. Then I forgot I was wearing it and tried doing an invocation to invoke one. Didn't work. There was a big collision and big psychic explosion, you might say, and I learned not to do that anymore.
And really, there's a lot of things you can't banish in the sense that, you're not going to make them disappear and go away. Things that belong where they are, like a land guardian, nature spirits, and things like that. It's a boundary setting thing is different than a banishment, and so with a banishment, you're sort of putting up a forever do not disturb sign, but a boundary is more of a not now kind of thing, and yeah, nuances.
Well, a lot of times if you want to concentrate one force, if you banish all other forces and then you invoke that one force, you're getting that force undiluted and by itself. So it's useful for that kind of things to banish everything out. But usually you're talking about a force, unless you have lots of beings just hanging around in your area, which you could. Barden warns about leaving like an element undissolved and leaving an element like a room filled with an element that elementals will then have a tendency to play in there.
Well, yeah, leave a
Natural,
room filled
yeah.
with water, and,
Well, yeah, exactly.
and then
You
the
get,
nymphs would come and want to
whatever.
go splash around. Yeah, well, I could see that. It would make perfect sense.
Yeah.
So Angela says, back, what did I miss? I don't know. There was a lot. We cannot tell what you've missed. Michael says, do you both feel that if we invoke something, we better know how to banish? Better word phrase, ask to leave with authority?
It depends on what you're invoking. Usually, when you use the word invoke, you're talking a god form or something that doesn't really need to be banished, but you can let it go, so to speak, and just release it and that kind of thing. So it depends. I do not recommend trying to invoke any of the beings, like say from Barden's first book, or Barden's second book, excuse me. Because what you would want to do is an evocation if you're talking about a regular being into a circle outside you, and I wouldn't recommend invoking a being unless you know it's a god form, unless you want to potentially harm yourself, depending.
Yeah, and maybe we need to back up a little bit and specify. Invoking is bringing an energy or a force or a being into yourself. And evoking is getting the being or energy or focus outside of yourself. And they're two entirely different things. So if you're invoking a deity, you want to make sure that you have a good relationship with that deity, because deities are a little bit more self-aware than just the standard kind of energetic form or what have you. And usually they decide whether or not they want to work with you. And one of the methods for doing an invocation of a being to get started to find out whether or not they're willing to work with you is to visualize them like manifesting behind you, and then you take a step into their space and then see what happens. If they're willing to work with you, then they'll be this kind of like embracing kind of thing, and if they're not, there will be sort of a kind of push away sort of thing, because when you're doing that, you're working with like a being that is independent of anything we might think or believe about them. But if you're just invoking like a force inside of yourself, that's a little bit different. It's a complicated subject for sure.
Yep.
So Luna says, hi all, I always miss these lives, and now that I'm here I feel that I'm late. Not sure what's going on right now. Sounds like banishing rituals? Well, that's the current question.
That's what we've been discussing, yep.
Yes. Violet says, I missed you, Angela. Jason says, many spirits are friends. Invite help and you can't go wrong. Welcome to stay, welcome to go. For me, that's the way I work with them. Yep. It's like I have a relationship with spirit beings. If they step over the line and are causing trouble, then I put my foot down and say, back off. And natural authority is how you do that, like you were talking about.
But I haven't had any trouble with, unless you go about trying to evoke demons or something,
Right.
Generally, you won't have much trouble.
Interesting experience this week. There was a night where my granddaughter apparently fell asleep in her car at a local parking lot and did not wake up until after 11 o'clock at night. And my daughter could tell where she was, so we knew where she was, where her car was, where her phone was. And so we went to bed. And I'm trying to sleep and having a hard time because I'm worried about her, of course. And then at midnight, 12:02 according to my clock, all of a sudden the spirit comes flying through my room and like flies at my head and wakes me up. It's like, whoa. And so I'm like, okay, I guess I better get up and see what's going on. So I got out of bed and looked out the front door, and our front light had turned on, which is a motion sensor light, and her car was in front of our house. So I thought, okay, so the spirit came to tell me that she was home. And then I went to bed after I texted my daughter so that when she woke up from a sound sleep, she would find out that her daughter, my granddaughter, was safe. But it was interesting because I didn't feel this was overstepping bounds. This was something I wanted to know and I was worried about. And so a spirit took it upon itself to let me know when she arrived. And it was exact. So it's kind of interesting. Okay. So Michael says, gotcha. Thank you so much. Definitely. Oh, wait. Lou says, my husband didn't get that job, but they hinted at a possibility of a different position in the same company in the beginning of the year. We'll see. One door closes, another one opens. Is that what they say? Something better will come your way?
Good luck for that.
Michael says, gotcha. Thank you so much. Definitely trying not to hurt anyone, especially myself. Laugh out loud. Gotcha on the deities. I will definitely try that to see if they want to work with me.
Yeah, the dogda makes me very loud.
Yeah. Violet says, that's an interesting thought about visualize behind me. I have such trust issues and front is better. Well, I guess you could have it in front of you and step into it, but that was the exercise I read, so I don't know that it matters, really. Michael says, welcome to stay, welcome to go, got it. Luo says, Goddess Isis seems to be interested in me. Can you talk about your experiences with Isis? Well, I have a lot of memories of working with her in Egypt, 2 different lifetimes. I've always felt very strongly connected with her, and I actually was at a play kind of thing, like a passion play or something or other, where they were putting on this thing and dedicating everybody there to the goddess Isis, which I was quite offended by because although I was already, not everyone there was, and that seemed like that was violating people's personal privacy rights and their choices and all this other stuff. I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's like, yeah, it's amorphous, kind of. I mean, I have a picture of her on my wall in here with a hand-painted papyrus from Egypt that I got, a new one, not an old one, obviously. But I've always been attracted to some of the Egyptian deities. We've got Thoth and Anubis, and I have Osiris, I think, in my room. And I think that they're different with everybody. So it's not like just one way that they can be with people. That their personalities are big enough that
right, and it seems
they
to
modify
be that
depending.
it seems to be that way with most of them, like Santeria or Voodoo. You might not just end up with like an Eliwa, but you end up with a specific version of Eliwa that matches you. So yeah, these things vary.
It has a lot to
They
do
have
with
different aspects.
it has a lot to
Yeah.
do with the secrets behind the veil. Um, um, Being able to see behind the veil of reality and to see the true nature of people. That's what I got out of Isis and what her veil is all about. Is like, and there is that hidden connection between all living things that is in that as well, and this acceptance kind of energetic stuff that comes along with it. Yeah. So Angela says, Isis is lovely, worked with her a bit as a baby witch. Her energy has a regal feel, but a softness to it. Yeah, that kind of thing. Vanessa V says, I had a dream where someone died and the Morrigan appeared behind me, and I thought it was my time to become her and walked into her, like to assist the person who had died. Wow. Michael says, so glad she was okay, your granddaughter. Such an awesome story. Yeah. Violet says, Angela on Isis, cool. Vanessa V adds, and then I was calling on Lou, who apparently was his deity. Any idea on the meaning? No. Lou was the Morrigan's deity? I don't know.
Well, to assist the person who died, the person's deity.
Oh,
I
the
think.
person's deity. Okay, my brain went in a different direction there. Thank you. And that could be, absolutely. I mean, I did that one distance thing where I discovered that Bridget was there for this other witch who asked for a healing. And it was a surprise because that isn't usually what happens, but I told her about it. So, yeah, that could be that you were just picking up on a connection there. Angela says, wasn't Isis the statue you found, Violet? It is indeed. Violet says she is making an appearance in the most delightful way. Angela says she is said to be able to teach people to understand each other and themselves. Ah. Desideradum says, sorry I'm late. Was curious how someone could protect and or banish an interdimensional being that can physically manifest like cryptids. Ah, I have no clue. Become as powerful a telepath as you can so that you can keep your thoughts secret and block them. That's all I can think of. Like, I don't know.
Well, anything that can physically manifest could be shot with a shotgun.
Good point.
Sorry.
Ooh, a message.
Not to be.
Oh. Not from the granddaughter. Okay. There was a message, but not from her. So she's still there, hopefully working, or she's fallen asleep. And he doesn't know who she is because he has sundowner syndrome. Oh, God. This could have some difficulties.
Well, I'm sure so you just wake her up. I mean.
Yeah. So Angela says cryptids probably pass Earth with the windows rolled up these days.
Yeah, it could be.
Michael says shotgun noted. Desideradum says flamethrower. Jacqueline says nice, Ian. Yeah, if they're physical, then physical things can harm them. This is true. He has such a cute sense of humor.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so anyway, yeah, we only have a couple of minutes, and I guess we're getting close to our hour and a half, and I'm glad we actually got to go do the whole show, so that's cool. We were prepared to have Ian have to leave to go pick up my granddaughter. I guess we'll find out later what the heck happened, if she's still cleaning. Maybe she's still cleaning. Violet says, Angela says, give the cryptids some candy and cake and chat with them.
Sounds like a better idea to me.
And Violet says, you have big love for your grandbaby girl, it shows. Thank you. Angela says, maybe that's why they manifest in the wilderness. Moonfire Dawn says, I was drawn to Isis and she was so kind. She said she would be there for me and sent me to Bastet. Yes. And I have one of her statues also on my altar. Angela says, because people are people-y.
Yep. That's the whole problem, I'm sure.
If we weren't so people-y, we might actually get somewhere, right?
Yep.
And Michael says, thank you, love you guys. Desideradum says, laugh out loud, Angela, eat candy and cake and not me.
That's right.
That's true.
Make 'em
An
happy,
alternative food
Fill 'em
source.
up first. And,
That's
yep.
right. They're too full on the goodies to eat any people. Violet says, Moonfire are cool on Bastet and laugh out loud people-y. Moonfire says, gotta stop humaning. Or gotta start, depending on your definition of being a human. All right, guys. I guess we need to go. Lulu says, I need help to heal mother issues. Perhaps that's what Isis wants to help me with. Yes. We all have these things. Jacqueline says, love you guys, so thankful for your generosity and sharing. Moonfire says, night night. Desert Autumn says, Bigfoot like spam, just FYI. They like spam, all right.
Well, I hate to say it, but I like spam a little bit.
All right. Everybody, bye. Love you all.
We'll just pretend I didn't say that. Good night.
All right.
Good day.
See you all next week.